perhaps an Indian princess, and a brave warrior that fell in love, and the chief didn't want him to marry him. You know, that sort of thing. But anyway, I've also heard it said in the lore of the folklore, I've heard it said that it's a Civil War casualty, a gentleman that is wandering around searching for his head because he lost it in the war. So there's a lot of interesting little tales, and you frequently run into that sort of thing when you have a dramatic sort of thing happen that nobody can explain. And I wanted to show you a book here that was written. This copy, of course, but it was written long ago right after the war by a veteran, and his name is Sam Watkins, and it's one of the most famous autobiographies of a common soldier written from that time, called Company H. He phonetically spells out H, so it's pronounced a certain way. But anyway, in it he talks about when he and his friend were on picket duty, in other words, guarding a camp, and they were a little bit out on their own, perhaps 50 yards away from each other or less. Sam saw something in the woods that appeared to be lanterns, and he shot at it once and twice, and there was several of them, and then one kept on coming right between him and his friend in the direct route of its travel, and he describes it in the book as being scared to death, and he describes it as a ball of light. And it sounds very much like our very own spook light. And then here's an interesting reaction of his friend when his friend ran up to see what he was shooting at and all that. And his friend, who was also there, on picket duty, he just laughed and he said, "Oh, we have those back home, and we call them jack-o'-lanterns, and they don't hurt anything." So, wow, what's that about? So there's all kinds of interesting things that just pop up, and you never know when you're going to run into it.
That's right. That's right, and it's not isolated. There are lights, ghost lights around the world, but and jack-o'-lantern was one name that it was given in the 1800s here too. I always find the interesting ones are when the farmers talk about it appearing in their barn and things like that. Anyone have an encounter with the spook light that was startling or unusual? We have a shy crowd.
I was about to say, y'all raised your hands that you saw the spook light. Come on, let's hear some stories. That's what this is about. Come on. What was that?
In 1978? On the road, or?
We don't have any of the cool stories of like it jumping on the hood of the car, or come on guys.
Yeah, those are the ones that we hear. People say, "Oh, we were out parking and it floated through the car," and that kind of thing. Actually, it doesn't like me today.
It might be me.
One of the most interesting encounters I've had with it.
It was me.
Oh.
Yep.
This is years ago, I was in college, we had 2 carloads of people out, and we were about 1/8 of a mile apart, and we were talking with walkie-talkies, facing each other. And I was actually in the group, we were facing east. Most people talk about seeing it facing west. And it appeared between the 2 groups of people. And we radioed to the others, do you see it? They couldn't see it. They started walking towards us, and they keep saying, we don't see anything, we see you guys, but nothing in between us. And from our perspective, they got right up on it, like just within feet, and it disappeared. And so they ended up coming up to us, and the entire way they never saw it. And so we were facing away from the highway, so it certainly couldn't be reflected lights, and seen from one direction. I've also seen it out in the woods and everything else out there. The primary explanations that have happened, it's actually been investigated a number of times, even by the Corps of Engineers and universities, are one, swamp gas. I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen a whole lot of deteriorating organic matter out there, or the lights. And so it leads to the question of what else could be out there. We are on a plateau of limestone which has a lot of crystal, conducts energy. Could it be geologic in nature? I don't know. Maybe atmospheric. But there are similar stories of lights down at the Devil's Promenade, which is only a couple miles away. How many are familiar with the Devil's Promenade? Not as many?
There's a lot less hands there.
Okay. Well, the Devil's Promenade is an outcropping of limestone over the river. Was it about a mile and a half, 2 miles from Spook Light Road?
Just about, yeah.
And it was ceremonial land for Indians for hundreds of years. And there's a tale there that young Indian lovers that were denied permission to get married leaped off of the outcropping, and perhaps their ghosts are there. But lights have been seen there as well. But the stories get even more interesting at the Devil's Promenade. There's a modern concrete bridge there now, but back in the 1800s, there's a wooden bridge and a wooden floor. And the reason it's called Devil's Promenade by the settlers was, the story went that if you went over that bridge at night, you could hear horse hooves going over, like a carriage or several horses running across the bridge. And it grew into, if you were there at midnight, you might be able to summon the devil. There are also tales there that you can summon the little people. The little people are, to Native Americans, are similar to Irish fairies. Not Disney fairies, but Irish fairies that are meddlesome and troublesome and kidnap people and trick people. And they look just like Indians, but they're about 2 feet tall, and like to lure people into the woods and trick them, that kind of thing. And the story goes that if you put out sweets or candy, that kind of thing, on the bridge, that they'll come out and they'll grant you a wish. But as in most fairy tales, if you get the wish, it usually doesn't end well. So, whether or not the Spook Light and the Devil's Promenade are connected, I'm not sure. Now, I know Alex had an interesting experience out at the Spook Light. You want to relay that?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Maybe.
Well, okay, yeah. I don't want that to happen while I'm talking. Can you hear me in the back? All right, cool. So unfortunately, as I was growing up, I didn't get to have the cool experience of going down there when it was not paved. All right. I hate using mics like this. And anyway, I didn't have the cool experience of going down when, it wasn't paved. It was a lot creepier down there. And I never saw it jump on the hood of my car, unfortunately. But one time in high school, and this was a regular occurrence, we'd just go down there, you hang out down there. It's just kind of what you did. I mean, it was probably about 2 a.m., and we were facing towards the highway. I'll tell you right now, there's no way that the highway did this. we weren't sure if we were seeing yeah, I'm just going to set this down. I hate mics. If it starts buzzing, everyone give a round of applause real quick to the sound guy up here because he's having a hell of a time.
Yes, thank you, Jim.
All right. We saw it down the road over like the crest of a hill. We weren't sure if it was like a street light or what exactly it was, but we were sitting there, we were just absolutely fixated on it. And we were staring at this thing for probably 10 minutes trying to figure out, are we actually looking at the spook light, or is we just staring at someone's like porch light? And apparently the whole time we hadn't noticed it was just like this encroaching fog that come up through the fields until it was right up on the truck that we were sitting in. And it was a fog so thick that we probably had 10 foot of visibility in front of us. At this point, your heart starts to kind of race. You get a little anxious because it's like, well, that's not usual, And, I don't get too terribly, like, spooked that often. And this spooked me. Because from the sides of the fields, all you could see were just, like, almost little silhouettes of, I thought they were coyotes out there running across the road and around the truck. Of course, you didn't hear anything. And that went on for, well, that felt like an eternity just because I was starting to get pretty scared there. And all of a sudden, against the top of the truck that we were in, it was just a huge slap. And of course, at this point, my friend was driving, and I've never seen him start that truck. It was a 64 Ford. He started that thing, we were gone. And we didn't stop until we got to pilot. We were scared witless. When we got out, there's just this huge crease in the top of the truck. And it was just completely smooth, and he had it, it was just real rough, like almost like spray painted. And to this day, that really disturbed me, because I've seen the spook light many times before that. And it's always been either in the road or off in the fields. I've never had a physical, reminder of what's down there. And that has stayed with me for a long time because, I thought I was going to die at one point. It's like there's ghost coyotes running around the truck. I don't know what's going on. And there's something down there, and it's cool, but we just need to know more about it.
Yeah. I think, in a way, I hate the fact that the road's paved because it makes it much harder to try to experience it, investigate, etc. And now you're getting younger people who don't experience it. I'm afraid we're going to kind of lose those legends and those stories about the spook light because people aren't going to experience it anymore.
Well, they run you off too now.
Yeah, they do. The sheriff's department runs you off, so you can't even sit down there. Maybe on one of the side roads that aren't paved, but it does get more difficult. We actually filmed a documentary with a British network a couple of years ago, and it was hard for them to get permission just to film. And so, again, these are things that we're going to lose, stories we're going to lose over time because of the way things are changing. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the spook light? I like to hear what other people have heard or experienced.
I always hear about the original Spook Light Road.
Right.
And that's not the paved road, right?
Yes. It is paved now. It's 50 Road. The original Spook Light Road is 50 Road, and it is paved. Now, I have heard that there are more sightings section over on 60 Road now. As well as on the north-south roads. And maybe it's because people are looking in other areas more. Maybe it was always seen there too, but everyone just went to the old Spook Light Road because that's
what you did.
So now people are kind of saying, well, I'll go a mile this way or a mile that way. And I do hear stories of, we did see it over there. So maybe that will continue, but it has lost its mystique a bit with it being paved. Actually, experience, I guess, related to what Alex was talking about, I had one time, there were several of us, we were walking along the road, and all of a sudden we heard a pack of coyotes yipping, and it sounded like they were all running towards us. And it sounded like there were probably 6 or 8 of them, quite a few, and coming from the side out of the field. And it's like the sound, even the running sound as well as the yipping, came across the road and past us and went on past us. But we never did see any coyotes anywhere. And there were 3 of us standing there, and we just all kind of looked at each other like, what just happened? So maybe that's kind of related to what you experienced. So there may be more than one thing going on, and I kind of associate those with maybe some of the native rituals and so forth that happened in that area, maybe. But any other questions or comments on that?
Right there, what's up?
Do you think maybe the reason they paved the road and run everybody off is because they know something's there?
I mean, honestly, the road just got paved mostly for the people that live there and the farmers to have easier access and move equipment. And unfortunately, with
Progress.
with progress, you lose a lot of that kind of genuine, like, local, as you said, mystique. It sucks that it got paved because, I mean, some of those bending curves right there on Spook Light Road, dirt road, trees all coming over you, that's spooky as hell, man.
And that's all gone now.
It's all gone. And so, but it's the price of progress, and you kind of lose this. And it is going to be sad because they run everybody off. Eventually, people won't be able to see the Spook Light. It'll be a story that crazy old grandpa tells you. So.
And then eventually even grandpas don't know it. So, and that happens everywhere, and that's why we want to do these things. But and if you do go to the Paranormal Science Lab Facebook page, the cover photo is actually a picture of the spook light that we captured probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, and it actually was captured on a north-south road, not Spook Light Road itself. So I mean, people do still have experiences, but they're harder to come by. And I mean, I remember you used to go out there, and there might be 10, 20 cars out there, and everyone's out there just watching and having enjoying themselves. But
it used to be if you saw lights behind you, you waited a little bit to see if it was the spook light or a car before you hit your brake lights to let them know you were there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was Spook Light Road etiquette even. Mm-hmm. And so we're losing that. Steve, do you have any thoughts to add to it or about Spook Light?
Well, when I've seen it, it seems to matter a great deal as to what position you are standing in on the road. Like, if you see it, then and move maybe 5 or 6 steps to the left, it will suddenly be gone. And you try 5 or 6 steps back to the right, and there it is again. Has anybody else noticed that angle or position makes a difference?
I've had a couple of sightings where it seemed to be like that, but then there were others that it didn't seem to matter so much. And it seems to be that seems to be more the case if you're facing west. But if you see it and you're facing east or north or south, it doesn't seem to be as dependent on exactly where you're standing. And since it's seen over an entire area, several square miles, that's what makes me think, no, it's not a reflection off clouds or things like that, aside from the fact that it was seen for decades before there were ever cars or headlights anyway. So
I'm kind of curious here. Raise your hand, and I want to hear from you. If you have any stories from down there, from Spook Light Road or the surrounding area, but it's not necessarily related to the spook light, but what I would call paranormal happenings, things you can't explain, that are from the area, but you don't see the light. We got any of those? I got 2 hands. You got 3 hands? Well, you got 1 hand, but, it's raised. Come on, raise the hand up. I got lights right here, man. Come on. There you go.
It happened nowhere in Oklahoma.
Well, that's not Spook Light Road.
Okay, so I'm from Alabama.
Okay.
Okay.
And this happened a couple months back. I was spending the night at a friend's house, and they have this road near their house that they call Lily Lane. And the story is that a lady drowned her baby in the pond and everything.
Yeah.
They also used to dump bodies there. Well, it was like 3 a.m. and he was like, "You wanna go to Lily Lake?" I was like, "Okay." So we got him and his sister. We all went down there. And when we got there, the closer we got to it, the more we felt. It wasn't like a panic. It wasn't anything. It was like this very warm. Me and him both. She didn't feel it, but me and him both felt the same exact feeling, which was warmth and comfort, but at the same time, go away. And so me and him were talking about it. And we decided, okay, let's just go back. We're not wanted here, so let's just turn back. Well, as I start to turn around, I see a light just go behind the tree. Like it looked like it went behind the tree and then this, like it peered out, and it looked like a dress. And so I was like, "Did you see that?" He, "No," and I'm explaining it to him. I'm like, and at that point you just start feeling like you're being watched.
Well, of course.
Right. So, we're going back, and they're telling us all this stuff about all these weird things happening in that neighborhood, and I'm just like, "Are you serious?" Like he even mentioned like dog man. I was like, "You're telling me there are werewolves in these woods?" He's like, "Oh, I've heard." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, it's 3 a.m. You're driving out here, and you're telling me now there's werewolves." Okay, but
See, we'll get stuff like that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
I figured you would.
Oh, yeah.
So we're walking back, and they're, him and his sister are talking and all that. And meanwhile, I'm just like looking and listening. I'm wondering if anything else is going to happen. And I just start hearing, and so I turn around, thinking something fell out of the tree. Start walking again, and then about a minute later, and this happens all the way down to the intersection where you can see the gas station that's right across from their house. By that point, I tell them that. I'm like, "Are you guys hearing this?" No? I'm like, "It sounds like a little kid, like dressed, and they're stopping on the road and stepping off every time I turn around, like I'm catching him, following us." And I was like telling them, I was like, "Wait. Let's just stand here, see if we hear anything." We stand there for a minute or so, it feels like forever. And eventually, they hear and it steps off and goes into the bush. And they're like, I'm like, "You heard that, right?" "Yeah." And I'm like, you imagine me being the one in the back, hearing this for 20 minutes, and driving myself insane going, "There's something behind me pointing." And so they're just like, "Okay, let's go back to the house." I'm like, "Okay." We go back to the house, and after that, everything's fine.
Well, of course, yeah. Don't you love when you get followed home, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the best. All right. Got you? All right, let's hear your story.
I've seen the Spook light, but it wasn't anything particularly unusual. It was just kind of the one thing.
And again, they pave the road and no one's car gets messed with anymore. It's weird.
But one of the areas in there that I've had a lot of stuff happen is actually there's a secondary bridge between Devil's Promenade and the Spook light, referred to as Little People's Bridge. They redid it recently. But
Yeah.
on that bridge, I have seen people be scratched. I have seen things thrown out of the woods, rocks tossed out. It's almost always lined with can of one kind or another. It's just pretty cool.
Yeah, and that goes back to the stories of summoning the little people. Yeah.
Yeah.
People do it at Devil's And I actually knew one gentleman years ago that he swore up and down that he had actually stolen some of the candy. And as he was leaving, he lost control of his car and had a very severe wreck. He had scars all over his upper body because it rolled and just tore him up. And he was convinced that it was a result of taking that candy.
Well, and that's consistent with the lore, is that, one, if you summon them, you certainly don't want to trick them, but particularly in the Cherokee tradition, they don't, if they see a little people, they don't even discuss it. There's a fairly famous story about John Ross, who was the Cherokee chief in the 1830s and 40s, and they had already come to Oklahoma, and he and several friends were out hunting, and they come up over a hill and they see several little people. And the story goes that they all looked at each other, and he just said, "We never speak of this again," and turned around and rode home. That's how much they don't want to offend or provoke the little people. So I could see that if you take their offering, that would go along with the tradition. That,
I mean, I was just thinking more, don't take candy from strangers on that one, but...
well, strangers gave the candy and then someone, yeah. But, so really, that's consistent. I like that story. That's cool. Was there someone else?
Let's hear it.
Back in 2003, I was with my friend's dad, and I don't know where it was at. I know it was out like Spook Life Way. I don't know if it road or what it was, but we went down there, and I remember we went down by the cemetery, and there was a U-turn there, and they U-turned there, and we went back. And it was kind of like by Hoffman Mansion, but I remember sitting there, and it looked like the lights were going like if they were on a highway, and then this light, this huge light, up this hill and coming towards the car, and like the smoke that you were talking about, the fog and stuff. But I don't know if that was actually the spook light or if it was just something else. But it was just something that interested me ever since I've seen it, and it was really scary. So we got out of there really fast. But
Well, there is that may have been at the Devil's Promenade, because there is a small cemetery at the top of the hill above the Devil's Promenade.
I don't think it was the cemetery. I think it's what we're talking about. That's right. I think it might have been Peoria, because I remember that there was a farmhouse on one side of it, and I know down at the Peoria Cemetery it sounded like it, but I'm not completely for sure. I just it wasn't. I know it wasn't at the witch's grave sites where the promenade is and stuff. But it was interesting.
Very cool, and I like, because I've heard several of the stories with the mist coming in, and so it's cool to hear those.
This is a good segue into Hoffman's Mansion. Do we have any other? Oh, right there.
How about we get Benton to take a microphone?
I can go ahead and take the microphone to people.
All right,
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I have the green broadcasting, so I know how to. I can handle this.
All right.
I've always been told by my relatives that, and by several people that you have to be quiet, not make no noise for the spook light to come out. So every time I went down there, I get frustrated because people want to act stupid at the party, and I feel like it was the reason why I wouldn't come out and I couldn't see it. Is there any truth to that?
I feel like that's one of those things that, well, you have like this generational thing here of people who have experienced this stuff. The older folks who, they have a lot more vivid experiences of the spook light. I feel like that's where we get the idea that we have to be quiet and almost like respectful there. Unfortunately, a lot of people my age went there and we kind of partied a lot. You did have a lot of people that kind of ruined it for everybody. And I don't necessarily think that you have to be quiet to see the spook light, but I think more so that the more things that are going on around you, the less likely you are to notice it. Because, I mean, whether or not it's appearing, like, it's there and you can see it, it's always going to be there. It's just whether or not it wants to be noticed. So that's one of those things that I wish I could give you a straight answer on, but I can't.
And I guess speaking for the older crowd, I don't know about you, Steve, but I found that a lot of times if you were distracted, you got to talking or something, boom, that's when it appeared. I don't know about you.
That was never the case.
That's a great question. I mean, I really don't have much to add other than very good question and topic to explore.
You see, I do like that question because does it affect it? I mean, and I guess that kind of goes back to, is it something that's self-aware? You know, if it's just a natural phenomena that happens, you know, at random times, it shouldn't affect that. Now, as Alex said, it might affect if you notice it, if you're preoccupied or not. But if it's something that's self-aware that plays cat and mouse games, it may affect it.
I want to go ahead and just add to your comment. First of all, my name is Christopher Wade. I teach a class in Kansas City called The Haunted Heartland.
Awesome.
I've been teaching this class for about 15 years at Spook University, so that's special interest class. I have had several of my students over the years tell me that one student said it didn't pass through their vehicle. I had another student tell me that it dented the hood of the car. Going to the topic of is it self-aware, is it intelligent? I've also had people tell me that somebody told me that they were trying to follow it through the woods, and the spook light actually doubled back and came up behind them.
Yes.
It also seems to be that you can only get to within X number of feet of the spook light before it disappears.
Yes.
That seems indicating intelligence also.
Mm-hmm.
And then Larry Irwin and Larry's one of the volunteers here, tour guide here. He and I had a possible sighting about 2 years ago. We were on one of the roads that parallels Spook Light Road, and we were actually facing to the east.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw this light, kind of an amber orangey light, slightly above the treetops, about, I don't know, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down the road. So we decided to drop towards it. And there was a dip in the road. So as we go down, when we hit the bottom of the dip, we lost sight of it for a second. When we came up on the top of the hill, I mean, this is no more than a second and a half, the light was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got down to where it was, all the coyotes were like in an agitated state. They were all yipping and howling, and I mean, that was scarier than the light.
Yeah.
Because I kind of thought that something is causing these animals to react in the way that they're reacting. So I'm inclined to think that Larry and I did see the spook light.
Well, and that's similar to the experience I had, although we never did see coyotes. But what I've thought about that, and it's almost like maybe running from a predator or something, but yet the yipping and everything didn't sound like warning. It sounded like more they were on the hunt, maybe them hunting something. So maybe when it's around, coyotes are trying to chase it instead of being afraid of it. I don't know, but I would say that it's real interesting.
I mean, I've always considered the spook light as an intelligent entity. I mean, just the countless stories of how it acts, it's definitely aware. And I also say that anything that spooks coyotes, I'm not about that.
Yeah.
If it spooks the coyotes, then I probably shouldn't be there. But
I've had people tell me they've seen the light split.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Only to come back together again.
I've seen that.
And that to me would seem to also show perhaps intelligence. I don't really expect to see that as some sort of natural type phenomenon.
And I will say I've seen that phenomena happen with orb of light, a ball of light, at a haunted location, Kendrick House actually. A ball of light looks just like the spook light floating through the house, and I've seen it separate and then come back together. We actually have that on video that we never could explain. And so, and I've had the experience once too, being down there. We were in two cars facing the same direction, but one parked on the left side of the road, one on the right, about 75 feet apart. And again, walkie-talkies, and we had seen it down the road, and this is facing east again, not west. And we had watched it, and it seemed to kind of meander in and out of the tree line coming towards us, and then it disappeared, and then boom, it appeared right between us and had reappeared quite a distance from where we'd seen it. And so it's stuff like that that makes me think sometimes that there's intent behind it, that there's some sort of intelligence, not random.
Do we have more hands? I thought I saw one more person raise their hand in the back. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, mine was more of a question for y'all, but I was wondering where y'all were from originally and your names.
You didn't introduce us.
Oh, I guess we got ahead of ourselves.
That's terrible manners.
Yeah, I introduced Steve, I didn't introduce us. My name's Lisa Martin, and I'm the team leader for Paranormal Science Lab. I grew up in Webb City, Missouri. I've lived in Missouri my entire life. And
I'm Alex Martin. It's my mom. But I'm also the co-team leader of Paranormal Science Lab, and it kind of sucks to have your mom as your boss, because even though I'm 26, I still got to listen to her now. But, Webb City, Missouri boy, this is what we do.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And we have investigated all over the Midwest, from the Chicago area to out in West Kansas, down south, further north. So I've covered a lot of territory doing these kind of things. I write books too on regional history and the paranormal, and so we've just encountered a lot of different things. And then Steve, though, is the one who has the world of knowledge on Civil War background here.
Well, someday I'd like to be an expert, but I don't know that I'm there yet. But I've had a few things published, and
Lots of books.
He's very modest.
And also, anyway, I work at the Civil War Museum in Carthage. Now that I'm semi-retired, so I work there 3 days a week. And by the way, it's free and it's real interesting. But anyway.
Yeah. So basically, we're all from this general area, and especially since we traveled and investigated things in a lot of areas, it really points out to us how many interesting things we have in the four-state area as far as paranormal things, mysteries, different things. And that's why we're building this Mysterious Four States series. And this is the first one. And we're going to have other topics coming in the next months. And just kind of celebrating home and our own legacy and history here. I thought I might have seen another hand, did I?
Well, I actually have a couple more.
Okay.
Oh, you got two-parters too?
I do have a story that was passed down to me from my grandparents. My great-grandparents actually owned a home out off Spook Road, a farm, and so my mother has seen it several times growing up. But my grandparents had never seen it and really didn't think a whole lot, about it being scary and stuff like that. They went on a double date one time with another couple, and they happened to be in the backseat of the car, and the spook light came through the car, and my grandparents were then believers because they both ended up in the floorboard hiding from it. So that was one of the first stories I ever heard about the spook light. But I did have a couple of questions. I know the Hoffman Mansion was out there, and the family cemetery was there on the grounds, and I know that they have, I don't know if it's complete, but the last one was up there, they were building a house on the same property, and I just kind of wondered if that had kicked up any additional activity out in the area, and what all you know about that.
I mean, and that, when I would say the segue into Hoffman Mansion, Hoffman Mansion is one of those situations that
There's a lot of
urban legends.
that go along with that place. A big problem with that place is that you're not supposed to be there. I didn't even know that they're building a house out there. That comes as news to me.
Yeah, I hadn't heard
because,
that.
Again, you go out to Hoffman's Mansion late at night, and maybe you might see ghosts or something might happen. But you're not supposed to be there, and they will run you off as soon as they notice someone out there. Mm-hmm. So as far as we're concerned, it's very difficult to do anything there.
Because they don't give permission. However, part of the problem with Hoffman's Mansion, this happens in different areas, is that legends have grown up around it that aren't true. The Hoffman's Mansion was the home for the Hoffman Quapaw family. The two families were intermarried, and Mr. Hoffman in the late 1800s made a fortune in the early oil fields in Oklahoma, and he built the house there for his family. A lot of legends have grown up about the family cemetery and child graves, and later on there was caretakers there that had kind of a little summer resort. And so there's urban legends that these people murdered children and buried them and so forth. And that's kind of where the legend of Hoffman's Mansion came up. But what really happened is those graves are the graves of the Hoffman children. There was a smallpox epidemic in the late 1800s, and they lost several children. That's what those graves are. Now, later on, the mansion burned to the ground, and part of the caretaker house is still standing, and maybe new construction. But that's really where a lot of those legends grew up. Now, there certainly could be activity out there, and I'm not going to say, especially, because our philosophy is we don't trespass. But a lot of what you hear out there is related to those urban legends that have grown up over the years.
Or so we're told.
Or so we're told. Even more recently, there was about 15 years ago, a van was found there burned out with a body in it, and probably a drug deal gone bad. So it was concluded. And a bunch of stories kind of resurfaced again about Hoffman's Mansion, and somehow that the ghosts there had contributed to that, but there's no indication of that. So there may be activity there, but I've never really heard any specific stories that would tell me, yeah, I think that probably is. It seems to be more related to the urban legends. Any other questions?
Got one right here. If I'm missing someone, just throw something at me. Just really wave, because it's hard for us to see. So go ahead.
Okay, so I'm saying that people have a hard time seeing if they can't go out there because the cops chase them off and everything and such like that. So I was curious, sitting there thinking, have you guys ever heard of or thought that maybe since the cops do chase everybody off, that maybe someday someone will do something that is safer to go out there, or do some kind of tour guide to see the spook light?
The problem with that is that that's all private land there, and if you've gone out there, and your buddy always tells you, hey, don't go on that guy's field, he'll shoot you. And some of them down there probably will. You can't really.
There's no good place to even park a bus anywhere close.
There's no good place to park a car.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you're hanging off the side of the road, halfway in the ditch, halfway on the road when you park down there. And so, I mean, it's not like you're going to have like a, celebrity home tour in an open top bus going through at 12 o'clock at night. But
yeah, because all you could do is basically just drive slowly through. So it would be difficult. It'd be cool. I mean, if we could ever figure out how to do it, I'd love to do it.
I'd love to do it, just because, I mean, again, in the 4-state area, it's kind of one of the things that you go do is you go try and see the spook light, but times are getting tough for that.
We've got a couple other things we were going to touch on in this section, and probably need to kind of get there before we run out of time.
Because she'll just talk and talk and talk and not realize what time it is.
I'm trying to keep track. And the next one is basically cryptids, Sasquatch, Bigfoot type stories. And we always think about, Oregon, Washington, California, places like that. There's one in southern Arkansas, Bogey Creek, that was made into a movie, but that's not really close to us. However, a lot of people say, I've never heard anything about Bigfoot in this area. But we've actually heard a lot of people with encounters, and actually quite a few in this area around Miami and Pitcher and so forth. Descriptions of a Bigfoot type creature. And what I find interesting is I've heard several people say they saw it walking the railroad tracks. And I thought, well, because I've always thought around here we don't have big wide open forests. And I thought, well, I guess that would be one way to hide or not be seen as much. But probably the most prevalent of the cryptid stories in this area is the Goat Man.
Who's heard of the Goat Man down here? So there's some very, very strong reactions there. I want to talk to you people.
Yeah.
Maybe outside later or something, just because we are running short on time here, but I've had some pretty crazy experiences associated with that.
And particularly on some tribal land. And the Goat Man is described as basically Bigfoot, covered in hair, but he has ram horns. And so like a ram horn goat. And one particular story, we've been down to what's called Goatman's Holler, and something definitely seemed to be tracking us. We never could catch a picture. I mean, it was like all the famous Bigfoot stories, and you can't quite get the picture.
You catch a glimpse, and by the time you get the camera, it's too late.
But definitely seemed to be tracking. And the landowners told a story that it's down this holler, and there's a creek in the bottom of it, and Natural Resources had come out to dredge the creek because they were having flooding issues. And while they're down there, their house is, maybe 3/4 of a mile away, something like that. And they start hearing gunshots. So they go down to investigate, and the DNR workers they're coming up wide-eyed, and they said this thing had come up on them. It sounded like they came over a hill, and they surprised each other. And they all they had was a .22, and they shot at it and thought they'd hit it, and it bellowed and ran off. And the workers, they left and said they were not coming back without a shotgun. The landowners said that it's been there forever, and from family members that lived there for generations, that it's always been there. So we do have a Bigfoot presence, stories here, even though we don't think about it.
See, that's the more fascinating part of the paranormal to me. I like those stories about things that they were here long before we got here. It's like I want to find out about that, but at the same time, getting tracked through, a hollow is not a fun experience.
No, until that happens to you, you always want, are they misidentifying a black bear or this or that? But
it ain't no bear that I saw, but
no.
Yeah.
And one other related one, anyone here ever heard of Galrow? Down along the White River in Arkansas?
We got one hand.
Okay, cool.
Right.
And it's a little different of a cryptid story. It's not exactly a river creature. Think of a wingless dragon almost. And it's basically been described as living in caves. Different descriptions are that it is up to 20 feet long and has 2 tusks and a spiny back, but just no wings. And that supposedly Galrow, it was named that because it makes a sound that sounds like Galrow. Now, there are some legends that people started seeing this in the river, and they were mistaking capsized boats from the Civil War for a creature in the water. And then other people say they attract it to caves and so forth. But it's never been definitively identified. And as far as I know, no pictures or anything. But so we had that kind of story as well. You raised your hand. Do you have any experience with it or heard anything different?
I've just read about it.
I mean, I'd love to catch a dragon. That'd be cool.
Scholars of different legends across the United States did actually mention it. It's located in one Arkansas, moving back to Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I guess the somebody actually dropped down an iron rod down the hole in the cave, and it came back again.
Oh, wow. Well, of course, it could be, depending on what it hit. I don't know. But, yeah, that's one that kind of fascinates me because it's not exactly what you hear all the time for cryptid stories in the United States, but more like lake monsters, but not exactly. We've got about 5 minutes in this session. Does anyone have any comments or questions that they want to put out there?
We got 2 hands right there.
Hi, I'm Matthew Morrison, and I'm the lead investigator for a local paranormal group called Pale Horse Investigations.
Awesome.
And I've got a fellow investigator here that had a question for you guys.
Sure.
Is the goat man connected to the deer lady in any way?
Connected to what?
Could you repeat
The
that?
deer lady?
The deer lady? I am not familiar with that. Do enlighten me.
Yeah.
There's a local legend, actually, you probably know more about it than I do, Mike. Okay. Well, there's a local legend. Has anyone heard of the deer lady around here?
See now you're all cutting us out of the fun stories here. Come on.
Yeah, come on.
So there's a local legend of a deer lady. She is kind of like a cryptid, but also kind of a Native American spirit. So the story goes that there was a lady, a Native American woman, that would help feed the deer, the local deer around her tribe, until a very bad winter came one season, and they didn't have any food to harvest. And so she ended up killing the deer and having to eat them. And because of this, was cursed. And because of the curse, became what was known as the deer lady, and is said to be spotted around the same kind of local area as the Spook light. And the deer lady is supposed to be part woman and part deer, and have the hooves of a deer, and will lure men out as a female, and then supposedly attack them.
Oh, kind of a succubus type.
Yes, kind of like a succubus, and would lure them out into the woods as screaming for help, or saying, I need help, or look at me, I'm, attractive woman in the woods, and then attack them.
I don't think the goatman's related to that, because everything that I've heard and speaking with tribal elders, they really do just view it as an unidentified animal, as a cryptid.
Okay, so it's kind of its own thing.
It's its own entity.
Yeah, and so
I do want to know more about this.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd be curious. Awesome.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Was there another hand? I can't.
Getting back, excuse me, to the coyotes, I always heard that when there were coyotes around, there was possibly Bigfoot around. That they, kind of associate them together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if there had been any reports of a Bigfoot in the Spook area.
Not that I know of specifically, but the Goatman Holler's not that far away. It's only a few miles away.
I know of a possible case. Again, my friend Larry, who's a tour guide here,
Mm-hmm.
he and a man named David were out on Spook Light Road. This was probably about 2 years ago. I saw some kind of large, dark, bipedal creature walk past back into his automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And Larry quickly told David to get back in the car,
Yeah.
and off they went.
Yeah, and see, there are definitely those just more Bigfoot tales in this area, and I've heard several, like I said, traveling the railroad tracks and everything, which I figure just trying to avoid people. So that's not surprising.
What I find interesting is all the stories, especially associated with the spook light and things, that involve coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, there's another story I have from from Spook Light Road that, I mean, I felt like I was lured out away from the car because I heard chains and like bells ringing, and I didn't know if I was just like, okay, maybe I need to go home and go to sleep because I'm too tired for this or what. But again, just darting, almost like, a coyote going at Mach speed kind of deal, but just, there's got to be an association there that I've yet to find the exact connection, but I really find it interesting, and yeah, that was my comment on that.
We've kind of come to the end of this section. We're going to have about a 15-minute break, and then the next session we'll be talking about some of the more infamous hauntings in the four-state area.
I highly encourage you to go to your car and get your coat.
Yeah, if you have a jacket, because it is pretty cool in here. And if anyone has any questions or they want to talk in between, I know I'm going to be in here, so feel free. So, but did you have anything to add in there on this topic, Steve?
No, I think that was all very interesting, though. I learned some things, and maybe a few other people did too.
Awesome. Well, everybody, we'll start back up in about 15 minutes if anyone needs to restroom or whatever, and then we'll be talking about hauntings. I'm going to stand up for a minute.
Thank you so much for helping out there.
Thank you.
I'll do the microphone thing if you want me to.
Oh,
the
yeah.
next session.
If
That'd be awesome.
I'll continue doing that.
I appreciate it.
After this whole thing, I want to get with you and
Sure.
exchange information.
Yes,
Sure, be
yes,
glad to.
definitely.
Your contact I'd like to have.
Thing I'm real knowledgeable about is the haunting from the false creator. I have done about 25 from I've investigated this case numerous times.
Well, you'd have to, yeah, but it's one part. Well, and actually, the way it is, you have those, there's a drop off.
Yeah, oh yeah, you better make sure you get this. But it'd be really different. I'm sure they pick up so many good cars, so much trash.
A lot of people out there. Well, we were trying to make this more interactive.
I've been chasing for years.
Now close the grapes then.
Talk about it.
Basically, if you want to do it, as long as you want to do it like that, so the microphones are a little bit closer to y'all, that might help.
Because they had to.
She has before, I don't know if she ever. Lisa, do you
Yes.
have any pamphlets or anything that
I-
right now or just on the internet?
Just on the internet.
Okay.
Paranormal Science Lab, and the best place to get information really is on Facebook because it's updated more regularly. But we have a lot of stuff coming up, so.
All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, the theater, they took care of that, so let's see. Yeah. Let's see.
Part of that is every time I've done it with other groups, they've always, like other people that rent want to show a movie, they always bring their own movies with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they did it because of, distribution, all that stuff. Let's see. Although it's in the public domain, so. We'll figure something out here. Yeah, I didn't even think about it because it was like, yeah, because when it was like, oh, they have to do it. So I was like, okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah. No, it was.
I have arrived.
We have a crisis.
What's the crisis?
Lack of communication.
We each thought the other was getting the movie.
So we don't have it.
And since Holly and Brad got it, I was just thinking, the theater had to do it for the distribution.
Well, we would if we had to get a license for
Right,
it. But since
yeah.
it's a public domain movie,
Right.
we just thought you guys had the copy.
Right. Okay. And see.
All right, guys. First the computer. Now this. All right, we're not.
Well, we hardly ever provide that
Right.
stuff. That's all provided. But I've got mine, so it's not
Right.
the end of the world.
Yeah. I didn't think about it.
I don't care about the computer. We can figure this out.
Yeah, I know. I just messaged Holly
I mean,
to
this
see.
is the point where if I got a old CD store or something and be like, yo, you got a copy of Hitchhiker? I'll go down and get it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where.
I'm gonna step outside.
Okay.
This is not what it looks like.
Okay.
Look at that.
Oh.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I don't know who would have it.